Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video I think is going to be very interesting. And I've done a few videos like this where we reverse engineer a spread, and I am reverse engineering a reading that I did not too long ago, just a few days ago, when it was brought to my attention that a young man named Riley Strain was missing. And so I pulled several cards on his behalf, and I asked the universe to direct the information where it needed to go. And as always, I asked for insights for best possible outcome. Now, one thing that I've noticed, and what I've done now is I've recreated that spread using the exact same cards. I was tempted to use my brand new Via Veil by Tarot Sheet Revival, but I didn't use that deck for this spread. And just the slightest differences between decks can make you see something different in a reading. So I wanted to keep it the exact same deck that I used, plus the same two extra cards, which you'll see what I'm talking about. I use those same two cards, and I have everything in the same position, upright or reversed, or however it appeared. So let me, if you haven't seen that video, I'll reference it down below so you can watch it first. And now that the young man's remains have been found, and I'm so sad, I'm really very sad to learn that he has passed away. But now that the young man's body has been found, and we kind of can assess, what happened, I want to take another look at these cards, because when we interpret, we're human beings, I'm a human being, and when we interpret cards, we interpret it based on the information that we have, because you're interpreting cards to answer a specific question, right? And so you use, common sense would tell you that you use the information that you have to fill in some of the gaps, which is what I did. And anyway, let me just flip the camera and we'll take a look at those same cards. Now, the deck that I had used was the Via Veil, Jacques Via Veil by Artisan Tarot. And then for the additional cards that I had to include due to the quintessential nature of the spread were I pulled from the Via Veil by Fleur Noir. Now, this, in understanding what occurred, we actually don't understand everything that happened, because all we know is that they found his body, and some of the information that I had been under the impression that a shirt he was wearing was found on someone else. Now, it turns out when the body was found, he was wearing his shirt. So that shirt was a red herring. It was a clue that somebody, might have actually seen somebody wearing a shirt that was very similar, but it wasn't his shirt. And so it becomes like a null and void point. Okay, we look at the first row. The first row, I interpret it as perhaps a bridge, an impetuous young man. Here we have an authority figure, and then here we have the Chariot, which could be seen as a car. Now, when I did this reading and I saw that row, I had no idea that he had encountered a police officer, which now makes a lot of sense. He had encountered a police officer who had been looking at a vehicle. And as far as I can tell, they were on a bridge. But at the time when I did this, I had no idea of that. And I interpreted it differently. I saw it as him encountering somebody on a bridge, perhaps, who had something to do with a vehicle, and in or on a vehicle, because this could be seen as somebody on a bicycle even, and if we look at it in modern day times, right? And this person being in a vehicle. Now, I wouldn't have seen Riley as a king, because he's a young man. So really, if anything, I should have recognized that this was Riley. a young, impetuous man. Now, one of the things that impetuous in the sense that he was drunk, not because that was his nature, but because his behavior was off, because he was under the influence of something, presumably alcohol. Now, one of the things I commented on is that the whole energy of this row was increasing in intensity. So we have a high level baton, which could suggest, social activity, high energy for social activity. Right? I interpret batons as a social thing. You could also see it as a bridge, and I mentioned that it could have been a bridge because this is something made of wood. And we think of, even if the bridge isn't made of wood, we think of bridges, as wooden sometimes, right? So we have this, and then we have I guess I just saw something like an encounter, maybe with somebody on a bridge, and that the person has a car or is on a vehicle or something like that. Now, there are 3 magicians that appear in this spread, and they all appear in this row, okay? But, when a magician, whatever card is the quint for the entire spread. Now, this is the spread I developed, so it kind of goes by my rules because it's my spread, you know what I'm saying? And I have, determined when I use this spread that the quint for the whole row, the whole spread, then thereby applies to each row. However, it seems to be more fully concentrated that we pay attention to what happened in this row. So I'm going off a little bit on a tangent, but I don't think so much that this row, I don't think it's so much that there was a con. It could have been, but I think this row, the only con maybe that could have been, based on what we know now, the only con that maybe we could see here is that things were not as what they seemed, because we had seen videos of Riley who was very drunk and falling and stumbling. But after I did this video, there surfaced after I did this video or this reading, this reading on video, there was released another video that I hadn't seen about Riley encountering a police officer on a bridge, right? And the police officer was involved in looking at a car. So this, I guess, would have been the confrontation, or not the confrontation, there wasn't a confrontation, but the meeting of Riley and the police officer, or the authority figure. So they met on or near a bridge, is how I'm seeing this based on what we now know. And the car, which is next to the police officer, I guess had the police officer's attention. But for a moment, he became aware of Riley. So, in retrospect, that's how I would see what these cards meant. Now, to me, because I was very focused on the battleur as being a trickster, a con that was being played, I was seeing it as being what motivated everything. But because it doesn't appear anywhere up here, and it doesn't really appear anywhere down here, the focus of the con or the trick seems to be in this row. But in a very general sense, I suppose that the trick, to a lesser degree, appeared in this row because things weren't as they seemed. Riley didn't seem to be as drunk as he was, and he seemed to be able to present himself to a police officer reasonably well. The police officer was associated with the car, but for a split second, I guess, turned his attention to Riley. Now, this row I saw entirely as something that went down in the bar. And the fact that 3 battleurs appear concentrated in this visual band still makes me think that something irregular occurred at the bar. Now, my interpretation originally was that there was some kind of sleight of hand or some kind of trick that happened at the bar. I wasn't accusing anyone. I didn't say it was the bartender. But something that I felt was intended for a female ended up going to him. Now, the fact that the young man his body was found, they may or may not be bothered with toxicology reports. I don't know how standard a toxicology report would be if somebody appears to have drowned accidentally or, passed away accidentally. I don't know. So maybe I'll never know exactly what happened here, but there really does seem to be some kind of trick or sleight of hand that occurred at the bar or regarding going to bars. Now, one thing I didn't point out and I didn't notice is that this king is focused on this con and the queen is looking at a con from a different angle or a trick from a different angle. So we have a match set of people. They're a pair, they're a couple. But they're not looking at each other, but they're both looking at the possibility of a trick, which I think is interesting. So, was there a switcheroo? It could have been. Maybe it could have been as innocent as a bartender fixing a really stiff drink for a young lady, and he was only getting something else, which could have maybe just been ginger ale, for all we know, and he accidentally got the stiff drink. So it doesn't have to be something that was so nefarious or anything like that. But there just seems to have been. I interpreted it and just kind of still see it as some kind of a sleight of hand regarding something that happened at the bar, and it kind of further was reinforced by the presence of Temperance, who the depiction of Temperance is switching, right, or combining, or changing one thing to another, right? So I'm still not exactly sure what this row is telling us regarding a trick or a sleight of hand event. But what I hadn't picked up on in that reading was how the couple, who are a couple, but they're not seeing things from the same perspective. So there seems to be an at odds regarding some detail that happened, I still think, at the bar. So maybe there's a difference of opinion. Now, I had also focused on how interesting it was that there's this solid block of people here. The only real court cards that all appear here as a block. So there's a lot of people who are associated with this. Maybe this also represents people who saw him, when he was walking and stumbling. And maybe there are individuals, maybe this represents witnesses who saw something that they thought was off. And they had a difference of opinion. Maybe it represents his parents. Maybe his parents didn't see things the same way, or maybe the father saw or thought there was a trick, but he was looking in one direction, and the mother, I can't speak for other people, I don't know. But at any rate, what I'm picking up on now with different eyes, and nothing's been revealed, about who these people might be, but I guess for me, the biggest mystery is what happened at the bar. What happened? And then the last row, now I didn't say it because I didn't want to declare that the young man would be found deceased. I think I mentioned it when I did another video using the Via Veal. When I finally was showcasing the Tarot Sheet Revival Via Veal, when I got to this card, I think I made a reference to this reading, saying how maybe the young man's body would be found inside some kind of, or hidden within some kind of structure. which I think is what actually occurred. Now, this row in that reading, I determined, since I couldn't understand it otherwise, I determined that this row probably represented where he actually was. And so I got the 3 of swords, and I had the 3 of coins. Now, the coins in this whole spread is the only representation of a calm or placid suit. All the others are action, agitated, right? We have batons and full force, a lot of energy in the batons. Then we have, swords, and we have swords, and we have swords, So there's a very active evening that this is portraying, a very active event, lots of action in this event, but this is the only one that was calm. And the 3 are pointing down, and it's earth. And so what I think I did state it in the video was that maybe he'll be found by water on the ground or near the edge of water. And what I didn't say, because I didn't want it to sound like I thought he was deceased, was that his body would be found encased in something. Now, as it turns out, I do believe, I don't know how close to the shoreline his body was found, but he was found not by police or anybody like law enforcement, but by people who were just working on the river. And by chance, they found his body when they moved an object, I think a barge or something, and his body popped up from under the barge. So his body had been held down, I guess, or was captured in a structure, which is what that is. So this, I kind of saw it like it happened, but I didn't say it at the time because I don't want to say the young man is dead, because I don't want to give up hope for anybody who's looking for the young guy, anything like that. Sometimes I don't always say what I see or what I sense. But for the overall read, the quintessential card overall to still be the con man really suggests that there's just like a trick regarding the entire thing, that there's just something is not how it seems. Now, it could be that because he was inebriated or intoxicated or under the influence of something, that the whole thing is like a trick, because things weren't as they usually are. Or his perceptions could have been tricked, could have been all about his own perceptions. His decision-making process was not what it could have been or should have been, because he was in unfamiliar territory. I think the best of us, with, the best condition we can be in, which would be sober, who might have been walking around that area at night in the dark, maybe any one of us could have fallen. Maybe any one of us could have fallen, because it doesn't seem as though there were I don't know. I didn't see guardrails. I saw opportunity for somebody to fall. And the other, let me flip the camera. Another very interesting point, which would reinforce the trick, was last night. I don't remember whose video I was looking at, or I don't know if it was a video, maybe it was an article, I can't rightly recall. But I either read or watched an account whereby, had he put in the name of his hotel room to see, get me to my hotel room, right? Which would be, if you're not familiar with where you are, you would put on your phone, get me to the hotel, right? And the name of the hotel apparently was very similar to the name of something that was in the area where he actually was. So there may have been a company or business with the same name or a very similar name to the hotel. And if he was somewhat disoriented and drunk or under the influence of something, he might not have caught that he was being directed to something other than the hotel, because where his credit card was found, I think, was in the vicinity of this other entity, this other business entity. So it's possible the trick or the con, could apply to a few things, including that he was misled into believing, that he was looking for the hotel. And so he went in a completely other direction because he thought he was following the right direction. Now just like the shirt, I don't know if that's been vetted. The shirt was vetted and it's not correct because obviously the young man was wearing the shirt. Whether or not he was looking for his hotel on the phone and the phone took him to another location with a similar name, that's only a possibility. I don't know if that's the truth. So time will tell if that was the truth. But it would also explain his disorientation and the trick. Like the whole thing, with the 3 appearances of the bachelor 3 times, just sort of tells me that there was a lot of sleight of hand or trick or confusion or being misled regarding that. I do think it's interesting, once I was watching the news and I saw the video of the young man, talking to the police officer, then I immediately knew that that's what that top row was. But I didn't have that information when I did it. But now it kind of stands out, near a bridge, which is kind of how I saw this, near a bridge. And how did I miss it? Near a bridge, a young man encounters a person of authority. And next to the person of authority, there's a vehicle. So, I misread it. I misunderstood it. And I was seeing it as there was some kind of trick that occurred on a bridge regarding perhaps somebody on a bicycle or in a car, and somebody who was more authoritative or more in a position to perhaps take advantage of the young man. I don't know. But now I see it in a whole different light based on, had I seen the video of the police officer before I did this video, I would have realized that there was an encounter with the police officer, which is also very interesting because he disappears almost immediately after his encounter with the police officer, which is kind of strange. So he must have fallen over or fallen off, taken a spill right near where that occurred, that happened. So that, showing the police, knowing, having that video with the police officer really tells us a lot. It tells us that that's where he was right before he disappeared. And it would be interesting to know if the credit card or the money access card or whatever it was that he had that was found by the TikTokers, if that was found in the vicinity where the police officer was, because that would tell us that's where he fell. And maybe the thing just fell out of his pocket. It doesn't seem as though, from what I've read, it doesn't seem as though the card was used for anything other than the bar tab. So it just perhaps fell from his pocket when he was falling. And the bottom row, I understood it when I did it, and I just didn't say they're going to find his body by the edge of the river underneath something or within something. I didn't say it, but that's kind of what I thought. And I didn't say it because I didn't want it to go out there, because I want the best possible outcome for a case. Plus, I don't know who would have heard it, and I don't want to have his parents, if they accidentally saw this video, say, oh my God, there's no hope. I would never want to send that message out. But at any rate, I think it's very important, and I do it routinely. I will reverse engineer many of my readings to see what insights I missed once we know, how something turned out. And we still don't know exactly everything that turned out, because all we know is that we found his body and that it looks as though it was probably an accidental fall. And we do know that he encountered a police officer who had been who had been distracted by a car at one point, but they had an encounter near a bridge or on a bridge. So that's all very interesting. The only thing that I haven't been able to make sense of then is what that center row is that has all the bateleurs, which to me suggests something that went on the bar. And if there was some kind of peculiar thing that occurred at the bar that started this whole thing from, putting this whole thing in motion. Anyway, until next time, friends, peace and stay well. And my heartfelt condolences regarding this young man. it broke my heart to learn, that his body was found, and I just want to put out healing vibes to his people, that in any ways possible they find some comfort or some kind of inner peace, because this is a tough one for anyone to go through. Until next time, peace, stay well, be kind, and do no harm.